One thing that I know is super, super tricky to do, but once mastered, you will stand out so much more as a job seeker, is almost removing that not desperate energy, but that urgency to get a job. Okay. I think if you can go into job interviews and just be grateful for the moment without kind of sounding too needy for work, you will rub off a lot better with recruiters. Okay. One thing about obviously myself being a recruiter is I obviously get a lot of people reaching out to me for opportunities and, do I know anybody in this industry and things along these lines. All right. Whilst I have no issue with helping people and I love talking with people, the biggest thing I notice is that when they're reaching out to me, they're just reaching out for a job. They're not necessarily reaching out with, I want to specialize in this industry or I've done this before and I want to move into this now. It's just kind of like a vague word and then it's like, I want to work here. Please, like, I need this job. Like, I've been searching for the last X amount of months. Please help me. Okay. It's not a bad thing to do, but something you need to be consciously aware of is that as a recruiter, my desire to help place you, I'm gonna want to help you, but I want to make sure I'm getting somebody who's going to go into a job and make sure that they're actually going to be happy for starters and actually perform well as well. All right. It may not seem likely to you, but as a recruiter, I actually do care about the people that I work with. You know what I mean? Especially like I work now in temporary recruitment as well, and I work with doctors. And a big part of my work is trying to get doctors working in rural parts of Australia. Okay. If I know, for example, a doctor says to me, I'm happy to travel somewhere with a beach nearby, all right, the last thing I'm going to do is sell him the opportunity to go somewhere in the middle of the outback or the middle of like rural Australia with no beaches around. You know what I mean? If he's got a change of heart in that one off situation, sure, but I'm not going to sit there and pressure him to take this role because it gets me a commission. I think that's useless, and I think it's a pretty crappy thing to do as a recruiter. All right. So, one thing I always want to make sure that I'm doing is when I'm working with somebody is that when they're going into that new job, they're actually going to be happy. All right. Particularly when I was working in the finance recruitment role, okay, I had a lot of people reaching out to me because they were just desperate for work. They just wanted to get a new job. And the number one thing I would always say to them is that I'm happy to help you, but I want to make sure that you're going to be happy when you're working, okay? You think the idea of just getting a job is going to bring you happiness. But at the end of the day, once you're 3 days in that job, if you hate it, like you're back to square one. You're no better off than having no job at all because you're still at that same level of happiness. Okay. So something consciously you need to be thinking about when you're going into a job search is making sure that when you are reaching out to recruiters, you are not bringing out that desperate, needy, urgent energy. All right. Because at the end of the day, it just makes it harder for us to understand specifically where you want to be because it feels like you're just very emotionally driven. It makes us think that, all you're thinking about is just getting a job rather than the job that's right for you. Now, again, I understand everybody's different. Some people need to make money more urgently than others. I totally get that. All right. But for the vast majority of us, we are in somewhat stable financial positions. Okay. So we don't not necessarily have the luxury, but we have the ability to wait an extra 2 to 3 weeks to find the right job. Okay. It's not a do or die situation, which if it is, this video is obviously not for you. Okay. Where I'm coming with this and where I'm going with this moving forward is I think when you can go into job interviews and be grateful for the present moment, but making sure that when you're going in for these jobs, all right, it's actually something you can see yourself doing, or you're asking the right questions to make sure that you are coming off as the most, insightful type of candidate, or like, not so much insightful, but making sure that, you're asking the right questions so you understand as well, more importantly from your end, what you're getting yourself into, rather than just hearing them talk about the job and you're just there like, yep, this is going to be better than doing nothing, whatever. I'm just going to say yes to everything and I'm going to take it. All right. That ability to do that and that mindset is actually going to cost you in the long run. Okay. Because what's going to happen is if you start that full-time job, all right, and you're not happy there and you have to leave, you're going to cost the company money. You're going to give the recruiter a bad rep. You may even stain your relationship with the recruiter. You're certainly going to stain it with the company. And you're going to set yourself back to point zero again, which is where you were a couple of weeks ago, just trying to find new work. Whereas if you took that time to kind of think, okay, this is my end goal, this is where I want to be, you're actually going to be able to filter out a lot better what's right and what's not right for you. And then when you go into the job interviews, it's a lot less of a dynamic of, okay, I want a job, let's work together. More so about, okay, obviously I want to work, but let's, you're asking me a couple of questions. Of course, let's take that time now and I'll ask you a couple of questions as well, because I know my end goal. I want to see if there's alignment from my end as well. So I make sure I'm the best possible candidate for you as well. You know what I mean? That's the mindset shift you guys need to have. So when you're going into job interviews, just make sure, guys, right? You are presenting yourself obviously as predictable and reliable, but you're stripping away that urgency for work, because that needy nature, recruiters can't pick up on it. And they will be less likely to want to work with you because they know that you just want a new job. All right. You don't care what you do. You don't care where you do it. You just want to work. And that's obviously, it's not a bad thing. It's a great thing to want to work, but you want to make sure you're going in the right environment for yourself. Okay. And making sure that you have the right environment is almost just as important as anything else you do in that whole job search, because it doesn't matter what you say or what you do. If you're not going to be happy with where you're doing it, it's not going to work. All right. So one thing you need to make sure that you're doing as a as a job candidate, and making sure that when you're going in for these job interviews, is just making sure that this is exactly where you want to be. And if it's not, take that time to go back, take that time and search, and just think a little bit more about, where do you want to be? What do you want to do? What type of work excites you, fulfills you? What type of things about your past opportunities have excited you? What did you enjoy getting out of bed for? You know what I mean? Things along these lines are things that you need to be analyzing when you're going into a job search, rather than just kind of going in and just being grateful for any opportunity because it's better than nothing. All right. And that's one thing, obviously, as a recruiter, when I have people reaching out to me, yes, I love to help them. But if I don't know exactly the end goal, how can I help them specifically, if that makes sense? Like, what makes me useful then, rather than just anyone else on this earth who can just get you a job at anywhere else because it's better than nothing? You know what I mean? So that's one thing I want you guys to consciously think about moving forward, is losing that urgency to get a job, and value the relationship with the recruiter, value the prospect of trying to find a job that fulfills you. And then eventually, once you're in that position, you're then able to ask the right questions and present yourself as a much more reliable and predictable candidate, because you are obviously passionate about the work. You're able to then ask them the right questions as well, because you then know exactly where that's going to lead you moving forward. And you're able to give a much better perception of yourself and fulfill the hiring manager a lot more, and instill more belief in them that you are the right person for the job. All right. If you guys want help with this, feel free to click the links below in my bio. More than happy to help you guys on a one-to-one level. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.